Hey everybody, producer Tom Barnes here for a love of Chicago in the Uptown neighborhood. You're looking at Lakeshore Drive, runs all the way to Hollywood, but years ago, Lakeshore Drive didn't come up this far. That's because this area of the city was known as a vacation hotspot, believe it or not. That's why Lakeview is called Lakeview, because of the wonderful views of Lake Michigan from all the vacation houses. Peter Alter over at the Chicago History Museum is going to tell us now, how did Uptown get its name?
Definitely, it is a geographically appropriate name. Also, I think often there's place names, street names where Chicagoans have tried to, dare I say it, take a page out of the book of New York City. So the idea of Uptown, I think in Manhattan, it's also sort of a nod to that. Broadway, which again is a nod to New York City, at one time was called like the Evanston Road because it led up to Evanston.
So one of the most unique things about Uptown are the massed quantities of apartments. There's a reason for it. Peter?
With the extension of Lakeshore Drive, the sort of need and desire and the ease to go to Uptown kind of evaporates in the late 20s and early 30s. So then by the Depression, World War II, a lot of those beautiful apartments get subdivided because they're too expensive to rent out or because we need housing for war workers.
So in fact, the Uptown neighborhood, definitely one of the most diverse neighborhoods in the city of Chicago. Peter, tell us how that happened.
After the war, wow, it becomes a super diverse community because there's high vacancy and low rents. So you have like former internees of the Japanese Americans, you have Native Americans coming from Western states, you have people from Appalachia as the coal mining economy is collapsing, then as the Vietnam War, Cambodia, all of that is happening, refugees from those areas are coming, and then later. Refugees from Ethiopia, from Bosnia, and so it becomes a super diverse community.
So when you're surrounded by urban development every which way you can look, you got to blow off some steam, hence the Broadway and Lawrence intersection. Plenty to do in this part of town.
Uptown has historically had some fabulous theaters. Of course, there's the Uptown Theater. The Green Mill, which you alluded to, in its sort of heyday where we associate a name like Uptown, there was the Green Mill, there was an active jazz scene, there's still an active spoken word music scene that especially is centered on the Green Mill. So yes, Al Capone, it's generally known that he would go to the Green Mill when he was in Chicago. He supposedly had a booth that he sat in all the time. And so, Uptown historically has had some of the most interesting sort of architecture in the city. Broadway was definitely one of those corridors of fancy apartments in the 20s.
Peter, you got any more fun facts about Uptown we need to know?
There's has been really for the last 15 to 20 years a growing gentrification, and Uptown being as like one of those cool places to live.
All right, so when you come in off of Lakeshore Drive, it's a little deceiving, the Uptown neighborhood. You're right here on the beautiful park, and of course then the grid that is all the houses and apartments behind you. Uptown, very, very big spot. They have Asia on Argyle, beautiful spot there with all of these restaurants, some of the best food you will ever have, and of course the entertainment that is Uptown. You have the Aragon Ballroom that has been around since the 1920s, the Riviera Theater, the Uptown Theater that one day hopefully will be renovated, and of course you have the Green Mill Cocktail Lounge, been around for over 100 years. I talked to the owner, Dave Jemilo, all about it now.
I'll tell you how I first came here. Sure. My dad used to go to the Aragon Ballroom in the 1930s with his buddy Duke, and they were two big Polish studs from the South Side. And they would take the...
As we all are.
Yes, thank you. And they'd take the train up here, or the L, and they'd go there to meet like women, and they'd always come here for a nightcap. And he'd tell me these stories when I'm 16, and I go, oh, that's cool, and he'd tell me the Green Mill, and drive by it and look at the flashing lights. And then when he had passed in 1984, and I said, I'm going to go check out that Green Mill place that he always talked about. And I walk in and I just go, oh, this is beautiful, even though it was all torn apart. But you could kind of see past that. And I owned another joint already, so I thought, oh, this would work. And I would do this, and I ended up talking to the bartender and saying, hey man, who owns this joint? He told me Steve Brend had been here since 1938 as a bartender. He bought it in 1960.
Wow.
And so I got in touch with Steve, and it was in rough shape, and he kind of was getting older and he wanted to get out, so we, arranged the deal, and it worked out.
You've had it for over just about 40 years?
Yeah.
And congratulations on that.
Thank you.
What is, when you look back at your 40 years, what are some of your highlights that you're most proud of?
Keeping it authentic, to not like commercializing the place, even though we're on TV right now or whatever, but
Right.
Keeping the prices low enough where normal people could come here, not changing things a lot, just staying the same. Like there'll be an old, like now all the old guys are dead, but like in the 80s, old guys would come in here and say, oh my God, this looks like it was when I used to come here 30 years ago. Well, that would have been 30 years ago. That would have been what, the 40s, 50s.
Yeah, old World War II vets.
Yeah, and they say it's the same. I go, yeah, it's not retro because it hasn't changed. People will build stuff like this to be retro, but we haven't changed. Our one telephone is a dial telephone.
Wow.
And we don't have a machine. We actually answer the phone and say, what do you want?
So if you're a lifelong Chicago and you've heard of legendary stories about the Green Mill, I gotta ask about Al Capone. Dave, what is up with these tunnels in Al Capone? Al Capone, he frequented the Green Mill back then, right?
Yeah.
Did he have a favorite spot in the mill?
Oh, the booth right here.
Right there, okay, the booth right there. And then I also heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, that back in the day, during Prohibition, when the cops would come in and try to bust up Capone, that there was a secret way out of this joint.
Yeah.
Where was that secret way?
Well, it's still there. It's there's a trap door behind the bar, and you go down and you go around, and then there's these other doors you got to go through, and then there's these tunnels you go through to get out of the building. And there's also rooms off the sides of the tunnels that had like everything goes parties.
Oh.
Meaning like, gambling, girls, all the things you're not supposed to do in polite company,
With so many great memories of the Green Mill, I had to ask Dave what his favorite one was.
Well, I'll tell you personally my favorite, which I love like Battle of the Saxes, and this would be in the 90s. Clifford Jordan, who was like way too famous to play here, but Wilbur Campbell talked him into it. So it's 3 saxophone players on stage. Clifford Jordan, Ed Peterson, and Von Freeman, 3 of the greatest tenors there are. And then Wilbur Campbell on drums, I think it was John Whitfield on bass, and Jody Christian on piano. And that was like my favorite because it was hearkening back to the old battles of the saxes with like Gene Ammons and Sonny Stitt back in the 50s, 40s and 50s.
You can really feel the love that Dave has for his club, and I asked him, what does he want people to take away from it if they've never been to his club, and why should they go there?
Oh, I keep saying the same thing as, kind of making people happy, not ripping them off, giving them a good product, trying to treat everyone fair. Like, you don't like pay any money to get anything ahead of time. Everyone's treated the same. I don't care if you're a multimillionaire. Bill Gates has been here. He still had to pay the cover to get in. I mean, he better pay.
Yeah.
Just treat everyone the same.
All right, that is the Green Mill in the Uptown neighborhood. I am producer Tom Barnes, thomas.barnas at cbs.com. If you have a neighborhood you want me to check out, thank you for watching. We'll see you later.